Coming to you from the Deep South, this is the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. High-impact leadership is not reserved for leaders, and it has nothing to do with your position, title, or rank. However, it does have everything to do with your character. It's time to climb to the next level and beyond, personally and professionally. Now, let's start making it happen with your host, Max Story.
Hello, and thanks for stopping by the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast today. So today we made it up to Chapter 18, which is actually Trait 18, Be Observant. As I continue this 30-part series on my book, Blue Collar Leadership and Teamwork, 30 Traits of High-Impact Players. The subtitle of this trait, Be Observant. The subtitle is With People, the small things are the big things. And that's B-I-G with capital letters. With people, the small things are the big things. That's why you need to be observant. Talked about last episode, talked about being helpful. The key to being helpful is to first be observant. Assuming you have the character that it takes to be helpful, then the key is to being helpful is to first be observant. You got to pay attention to what's going on around you. If you only focused on yourself, you're going to miss a lot. I know I missed a lot for a lot of years because I was only worried about me. But once I started focusing on other people and becoming observant for ways that I could help people or serve people, whichever word you want to use, my life started changing. My results started changing. Everything started changing. So I'll open with a quote today from Daniel Goleman. Daniel said this. He says, people who are empathic are more attuned to the subtle social signals that indicate what others need or want. And that right there, as soon as I read that quote to you just now, shared that quote with you, that I was reminded of Greg Williams, my friend Greg. I talked about him last episode. 6-time national champion, Auburn University head coach of the Auburn University equestrian team. That was him. When I talked about his sixth sense, that's what it was related to. Empathy. Being attuned to the subtle social signals that indicate what others need or want. Sometimes they're not so subtle. Somebody drops something, you can pick it up for them. Somebody's got their hands full trying to come in or out of a door, you can open it for them and hold the door open for them. Those are not so subtle. Those are pretty obvious to anybody that's got any kind of character would realize, hey, there's an opportunity to help somebody. But what Daniel Goleman's talking about are those subtle signals. You know, it's when you squint with your ears and listen with your eyes for the emotions. You're listening and looking at emotions or for emotions. What's between the words when people are speaking? What's going on? Their facial expressions, their behavior. As you learn and grow and develop your knowledge and understanding of personal growth and leadership principles, a lot of times that's the help somebody needs. They need you to drop a nugget of wisdom on them that they ain't never thought about. You know, if you got this book and you're reading the book, or if you listen to the book on audio, you listen to this podcast, so I assume a lot of you probably download the audio book version and listen to it instead of getting a hard copy. But if you listen to the audio version of this book, you'll know the chapter is only 6 or 7 minutes to listen to one chapter on audio. On these podcasts, I'm usually giving you 30 minutes or so, sometimes a little less, but most of the time it's between 20 and 30 minutes, closer to 30, because I like to talk. I got a lot of stuff to say. Hopefully a lot of people like to listen. It appears that way based on the analytics from my podcast. The reason I'm telling you that is what's in the book is very concentrated, very intentional, short message with some good stuff in it. And some of the things I share with you on the podcast are little principles and takeaways, like the quote. I read the quote that I used in the book to you a minute ago. I do that about every episode. I read some quotes, and then I share some thoughts. Sometimes I'll share some principles from the book, but I add a whole lot of extra thoughts. So the two of them together are pretty powerful. But you need to learn these principles. That's why I really like the hard copy book, is because if you get the hard copy book, I mean, you can pull that thing out when you're talking to somebody, and if you've whether you read the hard copy or you listen to it on audio, if you learn it, you know where it is, you can pull that book out, open it up to a certain trait, and read a certain quote, something you had a page folded over, or you had the words or sentence, quote, whatever you want to call it, highlighted. So you can drop them some nugget of wisdom right there. But what happens when you do that? When you pull out a real book and you flip it, and people see that it's marked up, and they see, and especially if they're observant, right? That's something they can see, they can feel it, they can experience it. You can pull out a real book, you can open that thing up, turn to that chapter, turn to that page, read it directly to them and give them a nugget. But you gave them more than that one nugget. You also gave them a visual to go with it. A lot of times if you do that for somebody, they'll say, what book is that? That's your opportunity to introduce them to that book so they can go feed themselves. If they ask you what book you learned that from and you got it in your hand, you can show it to them. They can see it, they can feel it, they can see that it's a little tiny book with little bitty chapters. I mean, it's 90 pages of content, 30 chapters, 3 pages each. You could show them how to go feed themselves. You can tell them about the podcast. It relates to it. All kind of things. I'm just trying to help you understand how to maximize when you're being helpful. But it starts with you being observant. In the words of Tim Sanders, he said this. He says, you don't help others because of who they are and how they can repay you. You should help them because it gives you an opportunity to do something incredible with all that you've learned and all you've become. See, if I wasn't doing this podcast, I would feel like I'm letting you down and a lot of other people because I have something to give. Some people could care less about it. Some people like the stuff I share. They just don't like me, so they want to learn it from somebody else. But there's people who like my content and they like me because I'm like them. Or they just like me because I talk funny. I don't know why some people like me, but they do. Whoever those people are who like to read my books or listen to my podcast or watch my videos or read my newsletters, whoever those people are, if I was not doing this or doing that, writing, making videos, recording podcasts, I'd be letting these people down. That drives me to do all this because remember last trait 17, it was powerful. Be helpful. If you want to be helpful and you're not helping people, you're letting yourself down. They often ask me, how do I charge my battery? I charge my battery by helping people. There ain't nothing charges my battery like helping people. I enjoy doing these podcasts. I kind of talk to you like you're sitting in a room with me. Same way I talk when I'm on stage, except for usually, it's me and Rhea together. But I'm still just talking to people, being authentic. So let me ask you what I usually ask you. You got that boss again. He's about to hire somebody. He's narrowed it down to 2 people. He's going to let you decide which one he hires. He comes to you like always, and he tells you, he's like, hey, I'm about to hire these 2 folks. One of these 2 people. I need you to decide. They're going to be working directly with you, so I'm going to let you decide which one. I can tell you they're both rock stars, but I can tell you what's different about them. They're the same, really, except for this one thing. One of them is observant. They pay attention to what's going on around them. They look for opportunities to help people. They look for quality problems. They look for safety issues. They pay attention to how people are feeling. In other words, I'm just telling you, they're observant. One of these people is very observant. They're both rock stars, but one's very observant. The other one, if you're old enough to remember that old cartoon, Mr. Magoo, he's kind of blind and lost, a little cartoon character. Well, that's the way the other one appears. They both rock stars. They got competency. What I need them to do, they can make it happen. One's observant, intentionally observant. The other one, they kind of just lost. You know those kind of people I'm talking about. Which one would you like me to hire? Again, when you look out the window, it's obvious. Everything being equal except one is observant. One pays zero attention to anything that doesn't have something specific to do with them. They don't pay attention. Which one do you want? You're going to want the observant person. We all would. But again, which one are you? Are you just there doing your job? Do your 8 till you can hit the gate? I'm just there to get a check. You may do a phenomenal job, but you may not be observant. Take this to the extreme. Think about a special ops team. There's a high impact team for you. Think about Navy SEALs. You think there's any Navy SEAL on a Navy SEAL team who would want somebody on their team who's not observant? No, it's not going to happen. Everybody on there is going to be laser focused on everything that's going on around them at all times. Are you that person? You don't have to be a Navy SEAL to be that person. I can tell you that being that way will make you tired. Just living life will make you tired. I'm very observant about everything. I pay attention to all kind of. When I'm driving, I'm not just driving down the road. When I meet oncoming traffic, this is just one example. I'm looking at the person's face. I want to see the face. I want to see, are they looking up? Are they looking down? Are they paying attention? Are they turning around feeding the kid in the back a bottle and they're not paying attention? I'm paying attention when I come up to a green light. I don't just zip through the green light. I'm trying to pay attention. Is there somebody running from the law on the left or the right? And they just gonna run the red light for them. My light's green, but are they gonna run their red light? I don't just drift through life. I'm very observant, but I ain't always been that way. I had to grow and develop that way. But being observant on a team, what's going on around you? Are you just, say it like I used to be when I used to work in the manufacturing plants? When my job was to run a machine, load, unload the machine. I was focused on loading and unloading the machine as fast as possible so I could get the most production, pushing the buttons. That's what I was focused on. Everything related to me and my job. When I was younger, I didn't focus on did the guy next to me need some help. I grew into that, though. When we were machining parts, there were a lot of metal chips. Some of them were long, stringy chips, and they get hung together, and they wouldn't go out the exit chute on the machine to go out into the scrap bin. It had a conveyor that would pull them out the back. They'd slide down a chute, fall on a conveyor, and it would go feed them up into a container, a scrap bin that the forklift would then pick up, carry away, and dump. But a lot of times when you run certain parts with a certain type of a cutting insert tool on the machine, they would be long, stringy chips, and they would get hung up. And when I first started, I didn't pay attention to somebody else's machine being hung up. I'm like, that's your job. I got to worry about mine. But as I grew and I was learning to be observant, and I was learning how to become a high-impact team player at work, it was easy in the Marines because we were expected to do that. But at work, we were not taught all these kind of principles. No one was modeling this. No one was expecting it. They just wished we would work together as a team, but nobody taught us what that meant. Nobody took us through content like this. Nobody led us through a book study to provoke thought within us or to raise our awareness of why these traits are important relative to growing and developing our influence and developing our career. and how it reflected upon our character. Nobody ever taught us that. But I accidentally started figuring it out. And the way that I did it was because the other guy did it. I noticed he started helping me. We talked about last time, right? Be helpful. Well, sometimes I was working with people who were helpful. And actually, the guy I'm thinking about now, he was a pastor. So he needed to be helpful. That if he wanted to model being a good pastor, that's what he needed to do. But he was a pastor at a small church. But he would help me. And it kind of rubbed off, so I started helping him. And then I realized he helped the person on the other side. I was on one side of him, but there were somebody else working on the other side of him. So he would help both. And it didn't take long after that, all of us started helping each other. I'd be walking past his machine to go help the other guy. But first thing we had to do was be observant, quit worrying about ourselves. When I very first started working, like I said, I wasn't approachable. I wasn't helpful. I was almost the opposite of all these things, really. Some of them I did good at, enough to get me promoted and get me pay raises and keep me hired. But again, our companies didn't value character development. They valued production. And so they didn't really think about teamwork, because a lot of times we were individual workers on individual jobs. All we had to do was our job and everything would work out. But those leaders were missing the point of how much synergy they could actually be between us if we would become high impact team players, like I'm trying to help you learn about as we go through this study, or this podcast series. But back those days, in the beginning, I was not approachable. I was not helpful. I was not observant relative to other people. I would have, when I was really young, I wouldn't want anybody helping me. I'd be like, you go worry about your own stuff, because what I knew, if they helping me, they would be expecting me to help them. And that's a good way to be, except for I wasn't like that. So I didn't want them helping me, because then I had to help them. And I'm still like that about some things, because I know that's how it works with most people. See, I try to help people without expecting anything, but most people are helping you because they want something. That's why I don't want a lot of people helping me. I don't want somebody paying for my dinner. I'll pay for your dinner. I don't want to be owing you anything. And the reason I'm like that still about a lot of things is because there's so many people that won't take advantage of you. I don't want to be taken advantage of. But if you won't get close to people, you can't help people. But what I am is I'm very observant. I'm trying to observe this person's character. Again, I told you the other episode, I want to be helpful where I want to be helpful, not just where somebody else wants me to be helpful, because I'm living in the very center of my lane. If it's a crisis, it's emergency, or just generally helping somebody, I'm good to go. But I'm not going to let somebody fill up my calendar. I'm just trying to warn you. You got to be observant of people, because a lot of people will take advantage of you. But at the same time, you got to be helpful. You got to help people. You got to build relationships. So how do you know what it is you need to do for others? First, you consider what physical and mental abilities you have within you that will benefit others. Don't let others decide that. You decide that. You figure that out. Then you must be observant and look for opportunities where you can do things to add value to others using what you have within. And see, I love what I'm doing. I love being helpful in the way that I am to other people. That's why no one has to motivate me to read all the time. Like I tell y'all, you're probably tired of hearing it. I'm going to say it the rest of my life because it's true. And it's a big piece of trying to motivate others. I read every day. I read every day so I can become more helpful every day. I learn things. I learn to see things that I used to overlook. That allows me to be more observant. All these traits I'm teaching you about in this book, I read lots of books so that I can get better at these traits and I can help other people get better. I may be good at one of these traits, but I read and I may learn something about one of these traits, and then I see somebody one day struggling with one of these traits. And because I read a lot about all kinds of things relative to character development, personal growth, influence, leadership, all that stuff, I'm able to pull out the right nugget that they need. I may have 1,000 nuggets I could pull out to teach somebody, but the one I teach the person tomorrow may be the one I read about today. When you help your teammates, you build trust. Being observant builds trust. Walking around with your head in the clouds. Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't see that. Oh, I missed that. All these things people say, people who are not observant, they create a lot of distrust. Pay attention to others so you can be helpful when an opportunity appears. And I did talk about it last episode when I was talking about being helpful, and I talked about my friend, head coach, Auburn University equestrian team, Greg Williams. He's very, very observant. He's looking for opportunities to help people. And I didn't mention it. It's not in this book, but I wrote about Greg in my book, Blue Collar Leadership Leading from the Front Lines. And I talked about in that book, not only be helpful, but I was talking about be the first to help. Greg was always the first to help. If you were around, somebody needed some help, Greg's going to know it before you. He knew it before me. Like I was telling you, he's got a sixth sense, but it's because he was observant. He's far stronger naturally. He probably has always naturally been helpful. I haven't. He had a big head start. He's that way automatically. I have to choose to be that way. I'm not that way automatically. Even to this day, I have to override my programming. That ain't how I was programmed. I had to unlearn a lot of stuff. But every day I have to choose to be somebody who I'm not naturally. So people who are natural in certain areas, they're going to leave you in the dust. That doesn't mean you can't be great in an area, but you can't compete with somebody who's natural at it. Now, there are a lot of leadership traits, character traits, that I am naturally good at. And I used to use them in the wrong way, but I was still naturally good at it. Like instead of motivating and inspiring people, I used to manipulate people. But I was good with influence because I could manipulate. And back then I valued manipulating. But my values have changed. So it's not hard for me to motivate and inspire people. It comes naturally to me because I want to influence people. I always have. But I used to want to influence people to manipulate people. Today I want to influence people to motivate and inspire people. That gives me a head start on a lot of people because there's a lot of people out there, they still want to manipulate. They even learn this stuff I'm teaching you so they can manipulate better. I hope that's not you, but you should reflect on that. You should really do some deep thinking about that. You may want to hit pause right here and think about, why are you really trying to learn this stuff? Is it so you can manipulate people better? Is it still about you? Or is it so you can help people? I'm going to tell you how you can find out real quick. If you paused and you back with me now, or you kept going, who are you teaching all this stuff to that you're learning? If you don't have a track record at this moment, if you've been learning this stuff for a while and you've been reading it and you realizing you're learning a lot more than everybody else, if you're not being a river, meaning letting it flow through you and into other people intentionally, on purpose, methodically, it's still about you. You're just learning this stuff for your own benefit. Nothing wrong with that. You probably need it. But there's a higher level. And I'm talking about success and significance. If you're learning this stuff and it's just about you, you're focused on success. If you're learning this stuff so you can teach it to other people, especially if you're a formal authority leader, I'm going to tell you straight up, if you're a formal authority leader and you're listening to this type content, you're not growing and developing your team, you're not using this stuff, you're probably not getting great results because it's still about you. Now, it can be about you and your team at the same time. But a lot of people who learn this, especially formal authority leaders, they just want to climb that ladder a little bit higher, a little bit faster. So they learn this stuff maybe to be effective, maybe to manipulate. I don't know. But they're not growing and developing and teaching it to their team. They're not doing book studies on it. So it's just a challenge for you today to pause and think about, why do you really want to learn this? Because if it's still about you, you're leaving a lot on the table. It's always got to be about you because it starts with you. Let me say it like I always say it. It's not about you, but it starts with you. Which means in the beginning it is about you. But it's really not about you. It's about you helping others. But if you're still stuck in it, it's all about you, you're missing the point. When you help your teammates, you build trust. If your teammates need your help but don't get it, you create distrust. Pay attention to others so you can be helpful when an opportunity appears. To be observant, you must shift the focus from yourself to the team. That's what I just talked to you about. You can focus on your needs while maintaining an awareness of your team's needs. You can do both. You may not want to do both, but you can and you should. As Ken Blanchard stated, people with humility don't think less of themselves. They just think about themselves less. That's a pretty popular quote, but a lot of people ain't heard it. You know, people who are thinking of themselves only, sometimes I'll hear them or they'll leave a comment somewhere on social media or they'll be talking to me in person. They'll say, none of this is new. You know why somebody says that? Because they're focused on themselves. It ain't new to them. Hello, people. There are new people being born every day. They're growing up. They ain't never heard this stuff. We got to keep learning it, keep sharing it, most importantly, so that those other people who haven't heard it can hear it. You with me? I hope you with me. I hope you're not one of them people that think it ain't nothing new. There are no new principles, but there are new people who have never heard these principles or the stories. But there are also new stories all the time of how different people have shared or experienced the same principle or applied the same principle. So, I'm going to close out today with a quote from John Maxwell. He says, a basic truth of life is that people will always move toward anyone who increases them and away from those who devalue them. That's a strong quote right there. A basic truth of life is that people will always move toward anyone who increases them and away from those who devalue them. That applies at home and it applies at work. If you got people at home who are not in your life that you wish were in your life, they probably felt devalued. Maybe they still do. Maybe there ain't nothing you can ever do to fix it, but maybe there is. If there are people in your life, or if there are people that are not in your life that you wish were in your life, personal life, go find you a mirror and get to work. That's the only chance you got. It ain't about fixing them. It's about working on you. You ain't willing to do that, you're probably going to keep missing them. Because whoever you are, relative to who they are, now they may have the problem. There's people I wish that was in my life. They ain't never going to be in my life because I'm not going where they are to meet them. I'm not going to reduce my character down to their level to have a relationship with those people. It's just a choice I have to make. What do I value? I can lower my standards, lower my character, and I can hang out with some people that I wish was in my life. Or I can maintain my high standards that I have for myself. Those other people ain't going to be in my life because they don't want to raise their standards. I don't want to lower my standards. We're going to have to do life separately. I can still love them. They may or may not love me, but we ain't going to be hanging out together. So what you need to do, be observant. Talk to you next time.
Make it happen or someone else will. It might as well be you. Are you serious about taking your career and your life to the next level and beyond? Check out Mac Story's Blue Collar Leadership series books and others, now available on audio, along with paperback and ebooks at Amazon, iTunes, and Audible. Please visit bluecollarleadership.com to learn about Mac's books, programs, special offers, certifications, and more. Thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast.